Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and the fit for this video is Spidey. Let's take a look at a video.
The question of like homosexuality in the Bible is not an argument up for discussion. It's actually a black and white issue.
All right, let's see it.
So, for example, people kind of debate this idea of arsenokoitai. It means something else. It was misinterpreted. The misprint of 1946. There's even a documentary coming out about it. So that's not true. Just because parts of that word were derived from another word to do with children or maps, I think is what I can say on here. That doesn't mean that that's what that word actually means. That's not how language works. To Paul, the word means homosexual. To his audience, the word means homosexual. It doesn't even matter if the word is derived from something like a totally different thing. If that's what he meant and that's how it was interpreted, then that's what it means. Do you know what I mean? That's how language works.
No, arsenokoitai absolutely did not mean homosexuals. That was not the meaning for Paul. That was not the meaning for his audience. Whether you understand the word homosexuals to refer to anyone who identifies as having a homosexual orientation, or you understand it to refer to anyone who engages in same-sex intercourse, both senses are flagrant mistranslations of the word arsenokoitai, which refers to men who take the insertive role in an act of same-sex intercourse. So it's not all people who identify as having a homosexual orientation. It's not even all people who engage in same-sex intercourse. It's not even all men who engage in same-sex intercourse. It is a specific role within a specific act of male same-sex intercourse. And if you look in 1 Corinthians 6:9, the word right next to it, malaki, refers to men who take the receptive role in an act of male same-sex intercourse. And these were two different roles that were understood to be motivated by entirely different things. And they did not have a notion of a versatile role because they did not have a notion of a sexual orientation that in any way, shape, or form whatsoever remotely approximates the way we understand sexual orientations today. They organized their knowledge of sexuality in very, very different ways anciently, ways that we abandoned long ago. They primarily organized their understanding of sexuality around a socially conventionalized hierarchy of domination. And sexual agency only flowed downhill. And the people downstream from you on that hierarchy, their agency, their will didn't really matter. They were passive sexual objects. It was the person higher up on the hierarchy who was the active sexual agent. And freeborn male citizens were at the pinnacle of that hierarchy. And so the reason that male same-sex intercourse was rationalized as wrong was because it violated the hierarchy by putting a man in a submissive subordinate sexual role on that hierarchy. Now, fundamentally, opposition to same-sex intercourse anciently was rooted in an intuitive sexual disgust. And here are a couple of articles you can read to better understand what that intuitive sexual disgust was. But it was basically related to cognitive default settings related to a sense of sexual and moral purity. And it differed from person to person and had to do with your own orientations and your own exposure to and familiarity with these kinds of sexuality. But on the social level, it has to be rationalized in a way that can be enforced and defended as normative. And so the idea of a social hierarchy of domination is what overwhelmingly governed the social discourse about the problems with same-sex intercourse anciently. Now, our sexual ethics today are built on entirely different frameworks and understandings, and they are not built on the Bible. As much as people think they are not. We develop our own sexual ethics, and the Bible is really just a proof text for people who want to arrogate more authority to their own particular sexual ethics. There are so many things that the Bible says is good and right that we have rejected, and rightly so. Anybody who thinks that they follow everything the Bible says is good and right and of God doesn't have the foggiest idea what they're talking about. They're simply wrong. Now, this is a feature of the Bible's outdated and obsolete and irrelevant sexual ethics that we have held on to for one main reason, and that main reason is that it has become an effective identity marker for certain groups, an effective tool to structure power and values and boundaries. And so it has been maintained as a tool for precisely that. But it is an incredibly harmful tool that has resulted in untold suffering and anguish and even death. And one day, we are going to look past our petty and our naive identity politics, and we are going to realize that no amount of value as an identity marker is worth the suffering and the anguish and the death that it causes. And we're going to put the lives of members of the LGBTQ plus community ahead of those petty and naive identity politics. It's only a question of when enough people decide that human lives are more important than their access to power and resources.